Well, what's up, everybody? Thank you so much for you being on tonight for another Barrier Breaker Monday. It has been a while if you watch these in real time since the last time I shared with you, but we're back like we never left. It's my hope that you took some time to go back and rewatch the previous weeks. And if you hadn't, I want to let you know they are available there for you. If you go to my website, teddymatthews.com, or if you go to our YouTube channel, all of those previous sessions are on there. And from the time we've started till today, until the day we stop doing them, I believe each of them are filled with a different degree of content, but all of it will help you overcome obstacles. All of it will help you break barriers, or at least learn what it means to become a barrier breaker. My conviction is this, that all of us will hit a wall. All of us will run into obstacles. It's not if I will, it's when I will. And when I do it, it's how will I overcome it. And so that's what these nights are about. They're about a conversation, honest conversation. You get to eavesdrop in, for a lack of better words, on a conversation between me and some guests. And tonight, I'm super excited about the guests that we have with us. But what I want to do first is I want you all to share this. I want you all to like it. I want you all to share it. I want you to make sure that people know that we're on. I want you to make sure that people know what's going on tonight. Again, it's a Monday night if you're watching it live, so I want to make sure that they know and that they're aware. And then to the replay crew, those who are watching this on a replay, I want to say thank you. I want to say welcome to you. And I want to give you the same opportunity and the same invitation as well to share the video with someone else, so that ultimately as many people as possible can be empowered, can learn, can grow. So I want you to do that for me, and I'll give you a second to do so. I want to make sure you're sharing. I want to make sure that you're liking, and I want to make sure that you're telling other people about it. Outside of that, you all know how we do on these nights. We try our best to just cut straight to the chase. So I don't have many other announcements. The one thing I do want to make sure you all are aware of is on Saturday, June 19th and Sunday, June 20th, it's Guys and Grads Fest, Grads and Guys Fest. More information to come about that, but I want to make sure you have that date in your calendar, June 19th, June 20th. It's going to be an incredible outreach effort if you're in the local community, celebrating our 2021 grads from all over the Chicagoland areas. Welcome to anybody and everybody who graduated in 2021, whether you graduated from kindergarten, whether you passed over from 5th grade to 6th grade, whether you graduated from 8th grade, whether you got your GED or your high school diploma, whether you get your bachelor's, your associate's, your master's, your PhD, whatever your degree, you got it. We want to celebrate you. And so more information to come about that, but I want to make sure that you are aware of it. Well, listen, with no further ado, we have an incredible guest tonight. This past weekend, for those who are watching it in real time, this past weekend was our Empowered Minds Mental Health Summit, which was a virtual mental health summit that we held during the month of May of 2021, depending on when you're watching this. And it was an incredible time where we spent time learning about ways in which we could find local mental health resources, or we can find stuff online, or how to look, the questions to ask for when we're looking for a provider. We learned about little people, big feelings, what it means to care for young people, to care for our children, or to be sensitive to the needs of other people's children. We learned about relationships in emotional and mental health, how the impact of that can happen, all of the span of relationships and how that can happen. But one of the you shouldn't have favorites of stuff, but it's okay. Y'all have favorite candies. It doesn't mean you don't like one candy. It doesn't mean you hate all candies. It just means you prefer one candy. And so one of the favorites, one of my favorites, and it wasn't because I was in it, it's because of the guest that I had with me, was prayer and Prozac. What the Bible has to say and what faith has to say in regards to mental health. And so by popular demand tonight, I have with me none other than Tandra Rutledge, who is an incredible human being, visionary, strategist, mental health advocate. I'm just when I have people on these nights, Tandra, I get to knight you. I get to speak to the world and to whoever watches these what my thoughts are. And when we were prepared for this, they were like, "Who is Tandra?" I said, "Tandra is a visionary. She's a strategist. She's a mental health advocate." And if I could have gave them longer stuff, I would have went on, because you are a powerhouse. Powerhouse is how I would describe. Woman of faith, mother, wife, just so many different things. And so many times we could get wrapped up almost in like our professional roles and miss the core and the crux of kind of who we uniquely are. And I think the world of you. So I want to say thank you so much for being on with us tonight, Tandra.
Thank you, Pastor Teddy, and thank you to Empowerment Church and all of the folks who got me here tonight. I also think the world of you. I have much respect for your ministry and the work that you do, and we have been in similar spaces throughout the years, and I've always been impressed. And thank you for having the conversation that you had on Saturday. I also know that you are an advocate for mental health yourself, and that you talk about the importance of it, you teach about it, and you always bring resources to our community. So thank you very much for sowing seeds of health and mental health in our community.
Absolutely. It's my privilege. It is my privilege. Well, on Saturday, we began a conversation that I would really like to kind of take some time to continue tonight. But before we do that, if you wouldn't mind, why don't you just introduce to whoever's watching this. Again, there's some that are going to watch it live, and there's many who watch back when they're just up late at night scrolling on Facebook and doing whatever they do. So whenever they may be watching, tell us a little bit about you, Tandra, just who you are as a person.
I'm a connector. When I think of who I am, I think that one of my gifts and one of the things that I enjoy is connecting people. You know, when we're talking and having conversations about mental health, connections make a difference. And that's what we did on Saturday, right? We connected, right? We connected with one another. And so I'm a connector. You've already said that I'm a wife, I'm a mother, I'm a Christian, I'm involved in ministry. I'm a servant, and I enjoy serving and helping others. I sometimes tell the story of, now I'm going to date myself right now. When I was a little girl, and what was it, Jerry Lewis would have the telethons that come on, and you know, you had to call, pick up the phone and call and give money. And I remember watching those those telethons, and I would call and I didn't have maybe 50 cents, and then I'd get something in the mail. And my dad was like, "What is this?" I was like, "I pledge 50 cents for the starving children." You know, so I knew from a very young age, and I think my family knew from a very young age, that I would live a life of service to others. And so I think that that is something that describes me.
I think that's so incredible. Just to be a connector and to be with someone that displays and carries and really lives from, if I probably was to take an estimate, like this place of compassion and care, is really something that's lost, I'm going to argue, in this day, or at least is undervalued at the minimum. It's undervalued for sure. And as a result, it's often overlooked. I was having a conversation earlier today about some of these soft skills. Is kind of the word that we typically use for certain stuff. It's the stuff that they don't teach us in schools, but makes the world of a difference. It's stuff that we're not. Some people are built that way. It's kind of how they're gifted. It's necessary for the kingdom advancement, necessary for marketplace advancement. But what would it be like if we just had more people who cared? Like, I just.
I mean, and that's what the summit was about. And I'm not, you know, I'm going back to it because, you know, May is Mental Health Month. It's one of the times throughout the year where we pay closer attention to our mental health and well-being. And I shared this with you on Saturday, that when I got the invitation and the title of the summit was "You Good?" You know, I was like, oh, we're going to have a conversation, right? And I was like, that's great, because what you're talking about, that connection to people, what you're talking about is having a conversation. I don't think we realize that by having a conversation, we can help somebody. By having a conversation, we can actually save someone's life. I don't think we realize it. So I know when we talk about it, we're talking about soft skills, but these are life-saving skills, connecting with one another. And honestly, it's what those of us in the community of faith are called to do.
Yes.
To build connections,
yes.
Right? To reconcile with one another, right? Build bridges.
Absolutely. I think it's needed. I love your commitment to it. So I want to say thank you for it. So before we jump into, I want to really kind of get back into what we talked about a bit on Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
But before we get there, if you wouldn't mind sharing, what was your pathway like on your journey into this field of mental health advocacy?
You know, I think that I gave you the example when I was like a little girl and calling the telethon. I think that that's where the seeds were planted, honestly, because if I look at my journey from being a little girl, you know, and watching telethons, seeing people hurting and wanting to do things to help people, it was natural. It was almost natural that I knew I was going to be a helper. And I enjoyed helping people and talking to people and helping people solve their problems. Mm-hmm. And so I knew that I would be in this field of mental health, but I didn't quite, you know, I had my plan and then God had his plan. So I'm not where I thought I would be, but I'm exactly where I should be.
Okay.
So, you know, it's been this process of me really understanding in a bigger way what I'm called to do, right? And so I've had triumphs, I've had failures, I've had roadblocks, I've had doubts, I've limited myself, right, in my thinking about things. And so it hasn't been a straight path. It's been a windy, turning kind of journey for me, and I'm still on it. I'm still on it.
So I love that you said that, because I think sometimes for whatever reason or another, we either estimate, presume, somehow are maybe pick up something that we didn't really intend to pick up, where it's like the path is going to be straight, narrow, clear toward purpose, toward life. And it's more like a roller coaster of just many sorts, right? It's not really like follow the yellow brick road all the way. And when it is, literally, if it's going to be following it, maybe it is the yellow brick road, because the yellow brick road had very many stops along the way, and none of those stops were expected. None of those stops were kind of what we'd anticipate, but all of those stops were necessary for it to get to the end. Everybody was needed along the way. So
absolutely.
Thank you for sharing it. So this is Mental Health Awareness Month, right? And we began a conversation on Saturday. Again, if you're watching this and you're unaware when we say Saturday was the Empowered Minds Mental Health Summit. And so we talked a bit about what it means to consider our faith as well as mental health. Not our faith or mental health, our faith and mental health. So tell us a little bit about just kind of how, same way you kind of got us started there, some of your thoughts and musings around it. You good. That was the title of it. You good. You good.
Yeah, and I told you on Saturday that I'm going to take that, Pastor. I hope you didn't get it copyrighted or anything, but like, I love that, because it really exemplifies what we all need to do in checking on one another. But I think one of the things that's important, that whenever I get a chance like this to talk about mental health, we have to start with defining what mental health is, right? And so understanding that mental health involves how we think, so our thoughts, how we feel, our emotions, and what we do. That's our mental health. And if you think about it, that's everything about us. So mental health is who we are. We all have thoughts, we have feelings, and we have behaviors. Mental health is not good or bad. It just is. And we all have it. And some of the challenges that we have when we look at stigma, in our society, we look at stigma in our communities, we look at stigma in the faith community, is around this notion that somehow mental health is not a part of health. And it is. It is. And I would even say that our mental health is more important or priority than our physical health, because we know that there is a connection between stress and our health, right? And so we have to understand and know what mental health. It's not anything to be feared. It ain't fake news, right? Boys do cry and should cry. We were created with a range of emotions. You're talking about barrier breaking and overcoming obstacles. Well, sometimes those obstacles that you overcome, they're in your mind, right? They're your thoughts, they're your emotions. They may be tied with experiences. They may be tied with trauma. You know, they may be tied with generational trauma, right? And so oftentimes to overcome barriers and to deal with obstacles in our lives, we have to deal with our mental health, which is our thoughts, our feelings, and our behaviors.
I love that. I love that. I've heard you say it about 30 times now. Each time you say it between today and Saturday, each time you said it, I wrote it down. You said it each time you said it tonight, I wrote it down as if I didn't write it down the first time you said it. So I hope that you all who are watching likewise do the same thing, because it's an absolute truth, specifically around the reality of it. All of it, be clear, all of it's true, but specifically for those who are looking to overcome degrees of obstacles or wrestle through challenges, it requires not just your physical wherewithal, it requires a healthy mind. It requires a healthy mind frame, mind state, mindset, that sometimes there's some walls we can't get past because, as Tandra said, because of the trauma that we've impacted. And sometimes we get hit by a trigger or we get hit by these other kind of things. And sometimes it's not always, again, as dire per se, but it's real. Sometimes there are real things, and we think we pretend as if it's the boogeyman, but it's like, no, it's a real mental barrier. Sometimes it's our confidence is connected to our mental health. Our courage is connected to our mental health. Our will, right? Because some stuff isn't skill, it's will.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
If this is impacted and if this is hurting, then I won't have the will to keep going or even try, for that matter.
Absolutely. And as you were talking, I was thinking about the fact that, you know, if I think of my own life, you know, because I'm not talking about something I don't know. I'm not. That's just not me, right? And so if I think about how I've overcome, and you asked me earlier how I kind of got on this path, and you know, that's a whole 3-hour breaking barriers, and I didn't sign up for that. But I think about how I had to get over myself, right? I had to get over the way I was thinking that wasn't pure, right? Or that wasn't noble. Right. Think on these things, the things that you think on. Right. And I had to deal with and get over me and my expectations, my feelings, my thoughts, and the things that I was doing. And then I had to get over. Right. I had to get over others and their expectations. Right. That they had and the thoughts that people were putting on me about who I am and what I should be. And those are things that I still deal with. So I'm not talking about something that I don't know, but I think that I want to make a distinction here between, and we talked about this on Saturday, between our mental health, which we all have, right? And someone who struggles with a mental health disorder, just like someone who has a physical disorder, because I don't ever want to give the impression that, oh, well, all I got to do is change my thoughts and I'm good. Because that may be the case, right? But sometimes there is more help that is needed. There is more support. So we're talking about prayer and Prozac. It's both and. And so we have to understand when it's time for us to reach out for help. And that can be the pastor, the youth pastor, right? It can be a physician, a mental health counselor. But there is a difference between our mental health and having a mental health disorder or an illness that is treatable. See, that's the thing that people don't understand, is that mental health conditions are treatable. And so what's that gauge for us to know? So we said our mental health revolves around how we think, how we feel, and what we do. Okay?
Right.
So when our thoughts, our feelings, and our behavior start to negatively impact our relationships with people. I know I'm stepping on some toes. Can't keep friends, always mad. Everybody always doing something to you. You the victim, blah, 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 right? When those thoughts, those feelings, and those behaviors negatively impact our relationships with our family, with our community, within our church, when those thoughts, feelings, and behaviors make it difficult for us to keep a job. You can't keep a job because your manager always doing something, but your job going from job to job to job, right? I don't want to minimize the real isms that do exist in our world. I'm not doing that. But when our thoughts, our feelings, and behaviors negatively impact our relationships with others, our ability to keep a job and go to school and be functioning in society, then that might suggest that there is something more going on that might warrant you meeting with a mental health professional. And so that's one of the things that I think we can help people to understand, knowing when to get help. Just like if I was sitting here, Pastor Teddy, and I started to have a pain in my side and my heart started racing, right? I would be like, oh, something's happening to me, right? And what would I do? I wouldn't just sit here. I would reach out for help. And in the same way, when our feelings and our thoughts and our behavior are causing problems and impairments in our life, we got to reach out.
That's right.
And then part of you good is sometimes we can't see it, right? And so if I'm around Pastor Teddy and he sees me and he says, Tandra, something seems a little off with you. You good? Right? But you create a space for me because you're noticing some things about me. And that's why I said connection and having conversation actually can save lives and make a difference.
That's so good. There's two things I want to pull out from what you just said there. Of course, the one I've got to pull out first is that definitive distinction between mental health and having a mental health disorder, right? I think that sometimes we don't do enough differentiation of that. And as a result of it, we don't handle it appropriately, right? And the fact of the matter is, because we don't view it the way in which you stated, we often either overlook or forget the fact that it's often treatable in some regard, in some way, shape, or form. There's a solution or some degree of remedy towards it. If we treat it, and when I say treat it, I mean if we handle it the way in which it needs to be handled. Again, if it's a headache, we find ways to address the headache. If it's a backache, we find ways to address our backaches. And however, it's these other things that sometimes we as you pulled out so eloquently on Saturday, that sometimes we normalize and become desensitized to. And as a result, go ahead.
No, I'm glad you said that, because we normalize the struggle, right? We normalize the struggle and things, the weight of that, and that things are like this, that we are supposed to be stressed and, and having problems sleeping, and because we got other things to take care of, that, we're gaining weight and we're eating and our health is bad, but we got to keep hustling. We got to keep going. We got to keep moving. And I do believe that we have normalized a lot of our trauma. And what we are experiencing are oftentimes reactions to trauma, stress reactions, stress responses to trauma. Imagine how much relief and release we could get if we were able to identify the things in our life that are causing us distress or difficulties, and learn skills in how to deal with it, right? Identifying what our triggers are and knowing when we're not okay, when our mental health is not okay, and doing something about it.
Yes.
Imagine that for a minute. Imagine that. Sometimes I'm going back to what you said about how we normalize it. Sometimes we all know people who are stuck in their own struggle. Right. Nothing's gonna get better. It's like this. Can't nobody say nothing. Can't nobody do nothing. I can't do nothing. And they committed to that misery. Right. And that's an extreme example, but there are many of us that really normalize the way that we feel, and that's unhealthy. And that's why there's so many chronic stress-related physical diseases that are absolutely killing us.
Yes.
Absolutely killing us.
Someone in the chat mentioned it's step off the wheel when you can and using vacation days. I mean, even to that, right? Like there's this thing specifically in our community that's like we were just raised. You don't. Some of us, let me rephrase it, because some of us overuse our vacation days, right? It's like you don't even. It's like you don't have any days left. But with others, it's like we don't take days off, right? It's you don't use those days, or you don't do this. Again, to kind of come back even to just the mental wellness and the mental health side, right? So not to step over into like the clinical side of things, but even to just stay on the everyday. We go through so much stressors and strain, but we don't even stop for rest purposes.
Yeah.
And
no, I was going to say that is so true. And I'm guilty of that. I remember early in my career, I would take a mental health day. I would plan it. You know, I would look at, look at the month, and I'd be like, okay, which day am I going to take a mental health day? And I would plan it. And then I lost track of that, right? Of taking that mental health day. But using our vacation days and taking time for our mental health and wellness, one of the things that I've learned about myself, especially this past year, right? Talking about mental health and talking about stress and all the things that everyone has been dealing with. One of the things that I learned, Pastor Teddy, is that I have about 3 months. After about 90 days, I need to take a break, like a break, like not like a day here, but I need to take 5 days, 10 days. I need to take that break. And I learned that about myself this year. But what's troubling to me is that I didn't realize it up to this point, and that I had been operating right on this cycle of go, team no sleep. I saw that in the chat, right? That's, team no sleep. You got to do everything for everybody. Imagine if, and a doctor told me this one time, actually my pediatrician. I said, well, how much sleep do my kids need? Is it 8 hours? Is it 10 hours? What's the good spot, right? And to figure out how much rest you need, go to sleep. Don't set a clock, and see what time you wake up. Now, if you're stressed, you might wake up through the night, right? And so go to sleep and see what time you wake up. And I know for me, I've been operating at times on 5-6 hours of sleep, and I really need 7.5 to 8. And when I don't get that, I'm different. And when I get that, I'm better. And so we have to take that time to slow down and be mindful, right? Be mindful, even if it's in the morning, Pastor Teddy, waking up in the morning, sitting on the side of the bed. Some people pray and study. Some, being mindful, not jumping out the bed and getting the day started and rushing, and then all of us are probably guilty of driving to work and not realizing how we got there. We got there safely, right? We're not being mindful. We're not stopping and thinking and appreciating the sights, the sounds, and experiencing the world through all of our senses. Do you realize just by thinking about a pleasant memory, if you just take a minute and think about, I want everybody watching to do that. You can close your eyes if you want. Pastor Taylor, don't close your eyes because that would really look funny. But take a moment and we're going to visit a nice emotion. Visit a nice emotion. So think about a pleasant emotion, a nice memory, the last family vacation or gathering. And I just want you to think about that experience. And as you're thinking about it, I want you to think about the sounds, right? What did it sound like? Who was there? What did it look like? Experience that through all of your emotions. And as you're doing that, I want you to take some deep breaths. Some real deep breaths, the kind of breath where you blow your, you breathe in and your belly blows out like a balloon. And then you exhale and you almost like whistle. Like take a few of those and just think about for a moment how your body feels. And just taking a few seconds of thinking on those things actually is a mindful activity, but it relaxes you. Just imagine if we did that throughout our day. Wow, just taking those little moments is very powerful.
Wow. I'm so glad you shared that. Unfortunately, I couldn't participate the same way that you all did. I learned about mindfulness during my wife's educational pursuits. It was one of the things in which she was learning about, and that's when I actually learned about mindfulness. And but it's powerful, and it really speaks to the busyness and the hurry and the everything that we are, and just kind of the nature of who we are sometimes, and the go and the run. Somebody mentioned earlier when you were talking that even Jesus took a rest. It's like we know that and we say it, but we don't actually practice that like he did.
Yeah.
Like it's definitely biblical.
Yeah, absolutely. And why do we deny ourselves rest? Why, we shouldn't deny ourselves rest. I mean, it really is, we are to honor our bodies. Our bodies are temples. And so when we think about our body, and that includes the mind, sometimes people be like, yeah, I work out, and I do this and but your mind is part of your body. Mm-hmm. It's part of your body. And so taking that rest is so very important. And we must make sure that we do that. I saw some comments in the chat. People said that they're smiling, that they feel lighter. Imagine that's just a little skill. It just took a moment. Mm-hmm. Right? It just took a moment. I also saw someone said something about saying no to those invitations. Mm-hmm. Why we can't do that?
It's amazing.
Why we can't do that?
It's amazing that we haven't, that we don't realize that no is a full sentence, and that my no's don't require an explanation to you all the time. My no is a no. Can you do this? No. And I don't need to feel bad about telling you why I can't or why I choose not to.
Yeah.
That's honest, right? Like sometimes we don't say no because we feel bad about saying no. And then what do I say when they ask me why? Well, they were wrong for asking you why. You do not owe them an explanation for why you can't.
And honestly, Pastor Teddy, we can't be mad when we're tired if we're telling everybody yes. I mean, because that's on us, right? We're adults. That's on us. And so knowing our limits, and there are times when we are going to say yes, and we're going to do something for someone else because it's needed, it's necessary, we want to do it. That's not what we're talking about. But what we're talking about is setting boundaries and setting limits and making sure that, we're taking care of ourselves. It's called the oxygen mask principle. Pastor Teddy, you've been on a plane. What do they tell you when you get on a plane? What they say? They say put your wife's mask on first.
They still tell you to put your mask on.
They still tell you. Now we got our mask and our mask, right? Right. It's the oxygen mask principle. You have to put your mask on first. Mm-hmm. I know as a mother, I remember being like, I'm going to use the word crispy because I don't want to get myself in trouble. I came home one day and I was crispy. Yeah, I was crispy, right? And I remember my husband looking at me, kind of giving me a side eye. And he said, you need to go take a nap. And I gave him a crispy response, but I went and took a nap. Mm-hmm. And then I got up and I said, thank you. Because he didn't say you good. But he said, you need to take care of yourself.
Yes.
Although it came out kind of, how husbands but I listened, right? And I went and I took a nap and I felt better. And I got up and I thanked him and I apologized to my children because that was what I needed. I needed rest, right? I needed rest. And so when you have people who care about you in your circle, and they can help you watch out for those times you get a little crispy and they can say, "You good?" Right?
Yeah.
And offer a suggestion. That's really powerful.
No, that's so amazing you said that. I was talking earlier to a banking executive, and the conversation was around just kind of the nature of the run that they're having during this season, and how hectic and so things have been in such a frenzy for them. And that was really the nature of the conversation of just the tools or the courtesy or the grace, honestly, that needs to be given permissively to say, no, you need this rest for you to be as functionally as effective as we need organizationally, as your spouse needs for you to be at home, as your children need for you to be as a parent. You need the grace to take the permission to take care of yourself. And again, for those of us who are people of faith, it makes it clear that our bodies are a temple.
Absolutely.
And if that's the case, we have to steward it accordingly. And some of us we've been terrible stewards over the primary thing that God's given to us in this regard. And so,
as people of faith, God extends his grace, to us. We extend grace to other people. I mean, there's something missing out of that, right? Like, right? We extend it to other people, but we have to extend it to ourselves. It's that oxygen mask principle. It's making sure that we are taking care of ourselves first so that we can then be about our Father's business, do the work of the ministry, take care of them kids, show up every day, right? We have to do that. It's not selfish. There actually is a definition of self-care. And I'm not going to quote it exactly. And it says that self-care involves those activities that are necessary to sustain life and health.
Wow.
That self-care is necessary to sustain life and health. Think about that for a minute, how powerful that is. That is not a choice, and it doesn't require a gym membership. You don't have to run a marathon. There are simple, mindful things that we can do and be role models for our family, for our community, for our children. Pastor Teddy, going back to the way that we think, there is a book that I started with my youngest son. My son is 10. And I notice how he says things like, I'm scared, or I don't know if I can do it. Okay, mommy, I'll try, things like that. And so there's a book for children, and actually they have it for adolescents and for adults, The Battlefield of the Mind.
Yes.
Yeah. So I don't want him to be going through it when he's my age. So we're starting it when we're his age. And so I'm going through the book with him, and I'm teaching him the importance of, as a man thinks, so is he. And that we have power over our thoughts.
Yes.
And that's what the book is outlining. Yes, it's by Joyce Meyer. That's what the book outlines. And so there's a children's version. Y'all get that. Don't even play. Yep. So not that I get paid by Joyce Meyer. I'm just saying it's a great tool, right? And so I'm helping him to understand the connection between his thoughts and his emotions and his behavior and how he shows up in the world, to try to help him learn skills at 10.
Right.
Not at 40, at 10. Now he's going to have other skills he's going to learn at 40, but I'm trying to prepare him, right, for life's journey and all of the obstacles and barriers that he's going to face.
Right.
And looking at, what other people may say or what you might see, but knowing who you are and how you were created. Right. So it's so very important for us to understand that. And again, I do not want to oversimplify, just change your thoughts, read a book and you're good. There is a distinction here between what I'm talking about right now, the examples that I'm giving.
Yes.
And individuals who might have and do have a mental health illness and disorder. As a matter of fact, my youngest son does have a mental health disorder. He has attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. So that is part of teaching him skills, coping skills, building his protective factors. You know, when we're, you know, you talk about risk and protective factors, building his protective factors, building his communication skills and his coping skills.
Yes.
So that he has positive outcomes in dealing with his mental health condition, and reduces the likelihood of him developing another co-occurring condition. Imagine if I didn't, you know, provide him with support and treatment. If I didn't do that, right? Imagine the trajectory for someone who has untreated mental health conditions. Sometimes we don't even know.
Right.
But I'm telling our listeners and our watchers right now, we need to know. There is no excuse for us not to know. We need to understand what mental health is. We need to know what the symptoms are, and we need to know what to do. And sometimes simply asking someone, "You good?" And then knowing resources to refer them to, local resources as well as national resources. So the crisis text number, 741-741, the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, 1-800-283-TALK. I'm sure your team will find that and put that up for you.
Yep.
But knowing those resources, and if all else fails and you're concerned about someone and you don't know what to do, you know, 911 or taking them to the nearest emergency room if you're concerned about their mental health and well-being. If they're, you know, having thoughts or expressing a desire to die, you know, or feeling hopeless, you know, if they're struggling, just like you would take someone who's dealing with physical symptoms. If someone is dealing with some serious mental health symptoms, you know, stuff is going on with their mind, you know, it's important to get them to help as quickly as possible.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I thank you again for clarifying that, because I think that we all need to make sure that we're aware of the differences that exist. And again, making sure that we don't attempt to become experts in fields that we aren't, but instead deferring to the resources that have been made available. And if we don't remember the phone numbers, if we don't remember the websites, the fact of the matter is, if we're with the person, we can always, the same way as if they slip and fell and we thought it was going to take too long for the ambulance to come, take them to the nearest place and allow trained professionals potentially to work and to guide through the situation. And it may be an educational experience for everybody involved to uncover something or unearth something that we didn't even know about. You said something that's critical, though. You talked about how it's important to know, but then you also talked about how it's important to know and to do something about it. It's been a thing in our community and culture for generations, that even those who know or have learned to some degree of some mental health illnesses or mental health disorders that either they themselves have encountered or that their family member has, and they may be aware of it, but they start saying stuff like, "I'm not claiming that." Or we talk about that.
And I will add to that, or we say, you know, well, you just, you know, in the faith community, you know, you're not praying hard enough. You don't trust God. But you don't trust God. God can cure anything. Yes, he can. And you might have to take some medicine or see a professional, you know. So it's Prozac and prayer and Prozac. I love that. I might steal that too, Pastor Kevin. It's prayer and Prozac. And it is important to be able to do something. Now, I also want to highlight that the very real experiences that many people have in our healthcare system and the very real barriers in terms of access to mental health, right? And access to culturally competent mental health, right? And the health equities and the disparities, you know, in our current healthcare system, where people have bad experiences, you know, and though that is real, right? We got to talk about that too, Pastor Teddy. We got to say, yeah, we know. And even historically, when we think about how we've been treated,
yes,
you know, in this country, and we talk about even how we're trying to overcome some of those stigmas now with the COVID vaccine in certain communities.
Yes.
So those are very real things. So let's just put that on the table.
Yes.
I mean, I'm gonna be honest. I did get the vaccine. I'm so silly, Pastor Teddy. And I was like, when I went to sit down, I was like, is there a tracking device in there? Is that the same medicine that you just gave that person right there? Let me see what you do. I mean, I was real silly, but I was serious because it was coming from a real place.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right. And we got to have these conversations. And so what I say to my friends and family and people who I've worked with about that, I validate that experience. I hear all the time from families who say, well, yeah, well, my son, you know, they said my son had ADHD, or my son had this, or my daughter had this, and they put them on all that medication and it didn't work. So I'm not doing this for this kid.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, so the first thing I say, because I'm a little silly, I say, well, would you have stopped the insulin? Or would you have gone back to the doctor and you said, okay, well, these are the side effects and I'm not sure that's working. And then there's silence. There's silence, right? Because, you know, the medical field isn't an exact science. And sometimes, and I know we talked about this on Saturday, sometimes you got to take somebody with you. Sometimes, Pastor Teddy, you're going to answer the phone, they got to call you and say, I need to get help. But I'm really concerned about going there by myself because I need an advocate and I need a voice.
Yes.
You know, I need to be seen and treated like a human. You know, I need them to take my pain seriously. Right? Because these things have been supported in research about how we have different experiences. So we can't let those experiences that we've had and that past trauma and history hinder us from being well. Right. We deserve to be well. We deserve, our families, our communities deserve to be, you know, healthy and well. And our mental health, you know, is so very important to our overall health, the health in our own health, the health of our families and our communities as well.
No, I love that. We deserve to be well. You know, at this point in time, if you all have any questions for Tandra tonight, this would be the time for you to start dropping those in the chat. That way we can make sure I allow her to get back to her other responsibilities for the night. But I want to say thank you so much for just sharing that. I mean, this has been so incredible. Of course, we've discussed, we could go on for hours, literally probably having this conversation. You know, something that Regina was one of our guests some weeks ago. And she talked about even her challenges she experienced in the healthcare field with infertility, but just also just general healthcare. And so, you know, it's real. There's a real thing that exists there. There's a real rationale around why some of us are hesitant and resistant. There's a real thing that many of us have experienced and felt. And so that has to be exposed. That has to be communicated. Are there any practical steps or recommendations you could give toward those who are trying to even find competent providers to assist them? Are there any, again, just things you would tell them to look for or to ask or to be considering?
Yeah, I think that there are some things that I can share. First and foremost, I would say that you need to start with someone you trust. So maybe it's your pediatrician for your child. Maybe it's your physician. Maybe it's your pastor. You know, start with someone that you trust and share your concerns. Now that person, right, should listen, support, not judge, show empathy, right? You don't have to know what to say. And even sometimes saying, you know, wow, that's really hard. I don't know what to say, but I care about you. How can I help you? So important to understand that it takes a lot for somebody to reach out for help. So Pastor Teddy, one of the things that I always say to people, I say, thank you for trusting me and sharing this with me. And I don't take that lightly. I don't start telling them, you know, why you shouldn't feel this way or what you need to do to fix it. And I'm a mental health professional, right? I just thank you for trusting me and sharing this information. And that's not enough, because we said that earlier. Now we got to do something. So start with someone you know, identify someone that you can trust to have that conversation with. Make sure that you reach out for help. There are, you have insurance, you can start with your insurance card. SAMHSA has a website, Riveredge Hospital. I work there. You can go to locally, you can go to our website. There also is another website, bhhelp.com, www.bhhelp.com. I think that's what it is, a new website that was launched. So find a provider, right? Find a provider, schedule that appointment, right? And then whatever it is that you are feeling on the inside about that next step, call it out, right? Don't keep it in. If you need to take someone with you, take someone with you. I've gone to appointments. I've gone to school meetings. You know, I've sat there with people to help give them voice to what they're experiencing. So call it out. Let the provider know this is really hard for me. You know, I prefer a male therapist. I prefer a female therapist. I prefer a Black therapist, you know, and let that be known. Or I prefer someone who understands and that I can connect with, because it is about relationship, Pastor Teddy.
It is. And I don't mean to cut you off, but I want you to speak to that there. And again, I'm being very conscious of the time for you, but can you, from your seat, again, reiterate the value and the fact that we have permission to look for certain things that we feel like we can relate to? Because in our community, I just feel like there's sometimes like, oh, I didn't know I could even do that. I didn't know I should do that. I didn't know I should ask for that. Can you just reiterate that again?
I mean, again, I'm real simple about things, Pastor Teddy. It's so important for you to ask for what you need, and that you can request somebody to treat your mental health who you're comfortable with. I wouldn't go to a medical doctor that I wasn't comfortable with. How many of us has changed doctors? Right? You know, I wouldn't do that. So you don't have to see a provider that you're not comfortable with. Now, as a provider, what I would say, right, and you can also break up with your provider if they aren't a good fit. But I would also challenge us, though. I would challenge us to have a conversation, right? To let providers know, right, if it isn't a good fit, and have the courage to say why that might be the case, so that they can hear it and we feel, and we're empowered, right? We're not taking that with us and hiding it under a pillow, but we're speaking our truth to the world, and we're saying to people, you know what, I really don't feel comfortable because of these things. Or I didn't care for the way you responded to this. Do you see me? Do you hear me?
That's
no,
good.
no, stop. Wait a minute. I said something very important. Don't gloss over it. Okay, I wouldn't characterize it the way that you did. And I'm referencing, you know, someone who was characterizing my son's behavior as aggressive. And I said, no, I'll write that down. He's not aggressive. You know, is he hurting? No, we're not going to use that term.
Wow.
To describe my Black son. And I said, don't do that again.
Wow.
Let me make it clear to you. So using our voices and speaking up on our own behalf, on our children's behalf, is so very important. Pastor Teddy, I know we are like right at time, and I want to be respectful. You know, you get me started. You know, I just keep going and going and going.
Okay.
I do want to be respectful of everyone's time and your time as well, sir.
Absolutely. Well, I do want to say thank you again so much for your time today. Thank you so much for your time on Saturday. And again, thank you to those who are watching this live, but then thank you to those who are watching this back. Whether you're watching this live or watch this back, again, I want to give you the invitation to extend the invitation to somebody else to watch this. Just as much as you may have gotten something from this, or even if you don't realize what you got from it, you should not rob somebody else of the opportunity to be encouraged, to be uplifted, to be empowered, or to be reminded through what's been shared through this time that we had together today with Tandra. Tandra, what ways can they reach you if someone wants to reach you?
Before I respond to that,
Okay.
I'm sorry. There was a comment that I believe someone who's watching, who's in law enforcement, made about being trained, you know, in crisis intervention. I'm a CIT facilitator, and I just want to acknowledge that. I just want to acknowledge what that individual said. He said the best thing I did in law enforcement was becoming CIT trained. You know, and police officers, law enforcement, first responders, it's important to understand what mental health is and how it shows up in people's behavior so that people can learn how to respond with compassion and care. And that's not just for law enforcement, it's for all of us, so that we can understand how to respond to individuals with compassion and with care. So I want to thank you all. If anyone wants to get in touch with me, I do. You can go to, oh my gosh, I don't know, what's my contact information? I do work at Riveredge Hospital, so you can go to Riveredge Hospital's website, www.riveredgehospital.com. I'm the director of business development there. You can send an email. Those emails come directly to me. You can reach out to Pastor Teddy. He knows how to reach
yes,
me.
We do.
Yeah, so you can definitely reach me. And I am on social media, but I told the team when we started that, like, I got to get better at responding. But I am on LinkedIn, so you can send me a message there as well.
We'll make sure if anybody's trying to get in touch with Tandra, we know how to reach her. And we know how to reach her. We plan to continue to reach her. And I would expect that you all will probably see her in some way, shape, or form through many of the things that we'll be doing going forward, as well as for those who attended the Empower Minds Mental Health Summit, there's a resource guide that you all will be getting that recaps what was shared, and Tandra's information will be shared inside of that as well. But I want to say thank you just so very much for what you shared tonight again, and what you shared on stage, just for your time and the care that you show and the intentionality. And your heart is really, it's really clear. Sometimes you can't tell, like you can't see somebody's heart, but it's like, no, sometimes you can just tell what they're saying is real, it's sincere, it's genuine. You shared your personal stories. You shared with us about your personal things, as well as things with your sons. And that means a lot, because it lets us know this is real to you. It's what it's what you practice. It's what you experience. This happens with all of us. And it's something that all of us can overcome, that all of us are able to, in some way, shape, or form, move forward to get better, as long as we're willing to be honest and just kind of pause. Even if we have to ask ourselves, you good? Look yourself in the mirror.
Absolutely. Right. You good? You good? Right.
And then and then again, I love it when Tandra said, and then if you're not, give yourself the grace to rest.
It's okay not to be okay. It's not okay not to do anything about it.
Oh, I love it. And we're going to end it on that note right there. Listen, if anybody's watching this and you need some further encouragement in this area, I actually just did a teaching. I normally don't mix my Monday nights with what we do at Empowerment, but I just did a teaching this past Sunday, depending on where you're watching this. It's on our YouTube channel. It was called It's Okay to Cry. And, I would definitely encourage any of you all who may have not caught it, but you're just trying to really kind of go through some things. I definitely think it may be worthwhile for some of you all to check out. There was also a series we did in September called I Am Not Okay. And
I saw that.
I would definitely encourage you all on that same track. But thank you again, Tandra. I'm going to let you go. Thank you all so much tonight. Please share this with your audiences and your spheres of influence. And we'll talk with you all later. But have an incredible night, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you.